This video is part of our Qt C++ GUI Development Intermediate course, and we will be using the basic knowledge we learned from the Graphics View Framework chapter. If you are interested in these basics and many more things we cover in the course, you can check it out from the link here, which is going to be shared in the video description below. In this lecture, we're going to move on and build our BirdItem. Okay, so this is the project as we left it in the last lecture, and we want to build the BirdItem wrapping around this image and make it fly and move through the pillar items we designed in the last lecture. Let's go ahead and create a new class for the BirdItem. We're going to name it BirdItem, and it's going to inherit Q object here. We're going to hit next and finish. Let's go to the header. We want this to also do double inheritance because it's going to have the properties, the custom properties that we want to animate. So we're going to include Q graphics pixmap item, and we're going to inherit that double inheritance here. Q graphics pixmap item. We're going to have the class N. We don't need any parent in here. Let's go back in the CPP file and modify our constructor to comply with what we have in the header. And this should work. Okay, we have this. The next thing we want to do is to make the BirdItem actually show up. Okay, we want this to have a default pixmap that is going to show the first time this thing is added to the scene. So we want to pass in a pixmap here in the constructor. We're going to call this pixmap, no big deal. And we want to go in the CPP file and also update the constructor. Let's copy the code because I don't want to type that. So we put that in the constructor here, and we want to set this as our pixmap. And we pass that in here. But we want to do something more complicated. We want this bird to be able to flap the wings. Remember, we have the bird in the up position for the wings. We have the middle position for the wings, and we have the down position for the wings. We want this bird to be able to flap using these images here. And what we're going to do is set up a timer that is going to time out at given intervals, and each time it times out, we're going to change the pixmap for this BirdItem here. So we're going to put in a private method, and we're going to call it void update pixmap, and we're going to implement this in the CPP file. And what this method is going to do, it's going to check the state the wings are in. And to make this simpler, we're going to define an enum for the wing position. So I am going to go up here and put in my enum. It's called wing position. And we also need a member variable for that. So wing position. We also want to put in another bool member variable, which is going to store the direction of the wings. We want to know if the wings are actually going up or down. We want to initialize these guys. Let's come here in the CPP file, and we're going to use an initializer list. The first thing we had was wing position, so we want to use wing position up as the default. And the wing direction is going to be 0 by default. You can use whatever you want. It's going to work equally well. We don't want this semicolon. It's going to mess things up. So we want to check and see if the wing position is in the middle. So we want to say if wing position equals wing position middle. We want to do something else. If it's not in the middle, we want to bring it in the middle. This is the way we're going to do this. And I am sure you can come up with different ways to do this, but this is what we're going to use here. We're going to set wing position, and we don't have a setter for that. We can say wing position equals wing position middle. We can set that directly because we are in this class here. Now, when the wing is in the middle, we want to go either up or down depending on the wing direction here. So we're going to say if wing direction, not position, direction. We're going to go up. We're going to set up the pixmap to be the up pixmap here. And we're going to go down otherwise. So inside here, we want to set the pixmap to a new pixmap that we want to use. So qpixmap, and we're going to pass in the app image, which is a bird blue up PNG here. We're going to copy that and put that in here. We also want to set the state. We're going to say we're going to say wing position. We're going to say wing position equals wing position up, and we are going to flip the wing direction. We're going to say wing direction equals 0 because it was 1 if we fell in here. So we're going to make it 0 for things to keep flapping around. We're going to copy this piece of code here and adapt it. And we want to use the down image. Be careful about this because you can mess things up. And it's really going to be hard to debug, wasting your time, and I don't want that. We want to go in the down position for the wing, and we want to flip this and make this a 1. This is going to cause, for every time this method is called, things are going to change here. If we are down, we're going to go up. If we are up, we're going to go down. If we go in the middle here, we also want to set the pixmap. We're going to say qpixmap. And we're going to pass in the middle position of the wing. We're going to copy the path to that in the resource files and put that here. And this is going to work just fine. Now we are done with this method. If you don't understand it, try to take another look at it. It is really simple. We are just setting the pixmap depending on the wing position and the wing direction. And I think we said wing position. This is really not good. We're going to refactor and rename symbol under cursor, and we're going to rename this to wing position. Let's correct this while we still can, and we should be fine. Okay, now that we have this, we're going to set up a timer, which is going to call this method at given intervals. You already know how to work with the timer. We're going to include qtimer here, and we're going to create a timer object, qtimer pointer bird wings timer. You can call it whatever you want. This is better for me. New qtimer, and we're going to give it a parent, which is an object, and this class is an object. Remember, we are subclassing qObject, so no problem here. And we want to connect bird wings timer and pass in pound symbol qtimer timeout. That's the signal we want. We're going to connect that to a lambda function, which is going to capture everything in the context. We're going to put in a parameter list and our body, and we're going to close that with a semicolon. What do we want to do inside this here? And we have a problem. What problem do we have? qtimer timeout. We want to put a comma here. We forgot that. So make sure this works. And we're going to go in the body here. Inside here, we just want to call update pixmap. We have access to that because we captured everything in the context here. I think we can call that. And a Qt creator is not helping out, but no problem. We can do this ourselves. And after this, we're going to have to start the timer. And we're going to try and use a given number for the interval. We're going to say bird wings timer start. And we're going to pass in 80 and see how this works out. Because we want to be flapping the wings a bit faster. Okay, we have the BirdItem. To try it out, we're going to create an object for it in the widget CPP file and add that to the scene. We're going to come here and include BirdItem instead of pillar item. We don't need pillars in here anymore, so we're going to remove this. But we're going to say BirdItem pointer bird equals new bird item, and we're going to add item. We're going to say scene add item, and we're going to say bird. Let's see how this looks. It's not bird, it's bird. Let's do that. And we need to pass in the pix map. We forgot that, so let's do that. Pix map, and we want to pass the wing position for up front. We're going to copy that and put that in here, and we're going to see how this works out. We can run the application and we should see our bird added to the scene. It should be at 0, 0 by default. And you see our bird is here and it's flapping the wings and it's being hit hard by our pillars. We are making some progress. We have the bird here. All we need to do is make it fall so that it can avoid being hit by these pillars. We're going to have to use the animations. We're going to animate the Y property of this bird, and we're going to make it fall, and we're going to do that right now. Let's go back to our bird class. We're going to go to BirdItem, and we're going to go to the top. We are going to put in two Q properties. We're going to say Q property, and we go down here for Qt to help out. I like this. This is going to be a QReal as well. The name is going to be rotation. And we're going to hit enter. We don't want the signal here, so we take it out. We're going to do the same thing for the Y property because we want this bird to be going up and down. So Q property, and we go down here. We don't want to do everything ourselves. We want Qt to help out. We're also going to say QReal. And this one is going to be Y. We hit enter. We have our getter and setter defined here. We don't want the signal. Do that. And we want to generate the methods for these Q properties to work. You already know this from the pillar item lecture. We did that there. And we have our getters and setters for this guy. We want to move this in the CPP file, because I like it that way. Refactor, move to CPP file. Let's go up and refactor and move to CPP. I just want to be able to have signatures only for methods in the header file. That's what I like, but you can keep them in the header file if you want. It's going to work equally well. Now we have these guys defined. We need to define our Q property animations. Let's do that. We're going to include Q property animation. We want to go down here and put in our Q property animations. Control A, Control I to align. I don't want to type all these things. And we can go down in the CPP file. We want to go down here and initialize these animations. We're going to start with the Y animation. So we're going to say Y animation equals new Q property animation. It is going to animate a property about this class here. The property we're going to be animating is Y, and the parent of this guy is going to be this. So this is going to be fine. We want to set the start value for the animation to be the current position for the bird item. So we're going to say Y animation, set start value, it's going to be pose Y. That's what we want, the Y position of the bird item here. This value is going to be scene pose, and we want the Y component of that. That's going to be the start value here. The end position is going to be the ground position that we are about to define. We're going to say end ground position. The end position is going to be the ground position. I actually want to define this in the header file because we might need to use that in other parts of the class. So let's go here, and under our properties, we're going to say QReal ground position, and we're going to go back in our CPP file and define that here. We're going to say ground position equals scene position for this length. scene pose, we want that, and we pick the Y location and we add a given value, which is going to bring this thing to the ground. You're going to see how this works, and we can adjust this value if it doesn't work exactly the way we want. So we're going to add 290 because this is what I tried and liked, and we can tweak this again if we don't like it, so no big deal here. We're going to say Y animation, set end value, it's going to be ground position. We want to give this guy an easing curve, set easing curve, and what do we use? Let's go in the documentation for a Q variant animation, Qt easing curve, and we can click on this guy to see all the easing curves. I want to try this one, and if we like it, we're going to keep it, so no big deal here. And you can read all about it. Easing curve for quadratic function, accelerating from 0 velocity. This is what is going to happen to our animation. We also want to give our animation a duration, so we're going to say set duration. We're going to give in 1 second, and we want to start the animation. Start, and we're going to see how this works out for our bird. We can run the application and see this in action. And the bird is not falling. Can you guess why? Try to guess why, based on what we saw in the pillar item lecture. For the animation to work, we need to actually modify the setter of the property we are using here. Remember, this is the Y property, and we have a setter for that property, and it is here. So we need to do something in the setter here about the class we have here. What we're going to do is move the bird down. So what we're going to do is say move by. We want to move this bird by a given distance. In X, we don't want to do any move, but in Y, we want to move the difference of Y minus the last value for Y that we have. And that one is stored in this my member variable here. Watch what happens when we run the application with this change applied here. We're going to run, and the bird is going to fall. You see that it's falling, and this is exactly what we want. Let's run again for you to see the bird, but it is straight. So we want it to tilt a little bit when it falls down, and we're also going to do that in a minute. But I want you to run this and get a feel of what is happening and make sure you understand that. Okay, we have the bird. Now we want to play with the rotation. As the bird falls, we also want to rotate it. The first thing we need to do is also modify the set rotation method, which is going to rotate the bird. So what I am going to do is put in the code and try to explain it, because you have seen all this. I am just using this in the context of the game we are designing here. We get the center point of the bird. This is how we pick it. We set up a transform that we are going to use to transform the bird and specifically rotate it here. The rotation is here as a parameter. We translate to the center of the bird because that's where we want to start rotating the bird. And we rotate and we come back to wherever we were before we applied this transform here. And we set the transform to be used by our bird here. This is really all we need to do here. Now that we have this, we can actually set up our animation to rotate our bird incrementally. We're going to go back to the top here and put in our rotation animation. Let's go to the header and make sure we have that. Yes, we have that in. So we set up that. We're going to say rotation animation equals new Q property animation, and it is this class here. The property is called rotation, I guess. Let's go back and make sure it is this property we defined here. We can copy it and make sure we don't have any typo, because that's going to be hard to debug. And we pass in our parent here. Let's go to the end and put in our semicolon. And after this, we want to put in our properties for this animation here. You already know this. We are going to start from the current location of Y, and you see that Y is modified as the bird falls. And for rotation animation, we want to put in a method that is going to help out because we're going to be rotating a lot. So we're going to go in the header here and put in a slot to set the rotation. We're going to give it the end location for the rotation. We're going to give it the duration, and we're going to give it the easing curve. We're going to implement these in the CPP file. And all we're going to do here is really pass the values we have in here on our rotation animation. So we're going to say rotation animation, set start value. The start value is going to be the current rotation we have. We have a getter for that, remember. We're going to set end value, rotation animation, set end value. It's going to be the end that we have in there. Set easing curve. This is the method, and we pass in our curve, not cure, but curve. And we want to set the duration. This is really repetitive, so bear with me. Set duration. We're going to pass in our duration, and we need to start the animation after this. We can say rotation, animation, start. Okay. And all we need to do is call this rotate2 method in the constructor to start rotating our bird. So we're going to say rotate2, and we're going to pass in 90. This is going to be the angle. The duration is going to be 1200 seconds. You can put in whatever you want. And we're going to pass in our easing curve. We can use what we have in here, or you can try the other easing curves in the documentation. You are free to try this if you are interested in that information. But for now, we're going to try and run the application and make sure it runs and the bird is falling exactly as we want. And watch that. Let's try and run again. You're going to see that the bird is going to rotate as it falls down. This is pretty cool. Okay, this is really cool. We have the bird in the scene and the bird is fallen. The next thing we want to do is to be able to shoot the bird up when the user presses in the mouse here, or if they hit the space button on their keyboard. We're going to stop here in this lecture because it's getting pretty long, and we are going to continue in the next one. So finish up here and meet me there.